Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Midsommar. This is Ari Aster's kind of follow-up, or just his second film, after Hereditary. And one thing to think about when you're thinking about this film is, and Ari Aster has even said, that this film is really his first horror film, viewing Hereditary as more of a drama, which is interesting. But I think in some ways, even though I consider Hereditary a horror film, that is true with this movie, because Midsommar plays more like a film that exists within an established horror genre. Certainly Hereditary you could call back to certain things, but not as directly as this. This is very much taking the idea that The Wicker Man presented and running it and twisting with it like a good horror genre directors do. And Ari Aster is very, very good at doing that, but it doesn't feel as surprising and different as it did when we got Hereditary, and I find that to be sort of an interesting thing. I've noticed that with a bunch of films this summer, is like you look at where they're placed in the context of, you know, this person's filmography or other films like it that are released, and it doesn't maybe feel as special. I could honestly see this film getting high praise later on. But what he uses, this idea, this Wicker Man sort of idea, when these graduate students decide to go on a trip to a kind of summer festival in Sweden, which apparently they do have, not to this extent. I've never been to one, so maybe, but I don't think they do. They go there and they're going to kind of learn about this community and this festival. But the one guy, his girlfriend, who is very, I guess, clingy or something, before the romance isn't really there, I guess. Him and his girlfriend, the romance is kind of dying. And when he's sort of not sure if he should keep it together or not, both her parents, her sister die, and obviously he doesn't think it is a good idea to break up with her. So then he decides to kind of bring her on this trip because he's not sure exactly how to tell her about the trip and doesn't want to exactly leave her alone either, and so she comes along. And it's kind of almost as much about their relationship and their relationships to each other and how like closed off they are than it is about a kind of horror movie of this kind of weird community. It's interesting what Ari Aster says a lot about family, and particularly family death seems to be a constant theme of his. I don't know exactly who in his family died at what point, but it sounds like it hurt him quite a lot. And I think, sometimes, you have family members who die when they're older, but this is more about horrific family death, specifically in his film. I mean, if you look at from what happened in Hereditary to what happened in this film, and how that kind of affects you and affects you long term and affects your mental state and everything like that. And it's sort of interesting how much he uses that as something horrific. That is horrific. That would be horrible if some accident happens to your family. That's a horrible thing to think about, and it's a horrible thing to happen, and he treats it as such, but he understands the kind of emotional impact it really has on a person and on a family. And I think that goes throughout that is the Florence Pugh character has that happen to her, and it feels like she's having a very hard time. I mean, that's pretty horrific, like that's losing everyone. But it also gets into this relationship that, they've stopped communicating. He seems very distant, and he does a good job of kind of playing with the idea that why would you stay with someone for so long? I sort of get when people were like, well, you can kind of see it through his character, why, she felt he was good. I never really got that. I thought he was supposed to be kind of like toxic masculinity kind of guy. I didn't really see much good about him, although I think it's more from her perspective. I sort of saw more of where he was coming from at the beginning of the film, before like her whole family died, when she was maybe calling him too much and stuff, and it was like, yeah, sure, that could be annoying, and I'm sure that wasn't the first time they had to have dealt with that, and it probably was annoying, in all fairness, but then he really just was not there for her, I think, and was not taking on helping her through those emotions like a good partner really should. I don't think he really knew why he was with her other than to simply just be with her. And I think he's almost like maybe the more of the monster of this movie, because he's just willing to keep this along. I don't think he knows why, and he doesn't seem to be getting any enjoyment or anything emotionally fulfilling out of it. So you kind of question, I question why she was with him for so long too, but I think as him stretching it along to be the good guy, basically, I find that to be interesting, because there seems to be there's arguments, and couples have arguments after this film, views of watching it between men and women, and most of the male perspectives I've heard on this are pretty stupid, and I wasn't that interested in them. Particularly like, oh, well, is she really doing what she's doing? Is she really reacting that way? And I'm like, I don't understand that one. Like, I was totally understanding her side of it, and it's very narratively understanding how to go through her side of it, but his side I found harder because it almost like I never really understood. He just felt like someone who was just egging someone along just because he politely and through society's view of him just having a girlfriend felt like he was supposed to, and that feels more like honestly horrifying. He feels like kind of this awful, horrible person because you're like, well, what are you doing? And it seems like he doesn't even really know. He just sort of wants things to want them to get things done. I mean, if you look at how he treated the thesis in this film and how trying to steal someone else's thesis, he just feels like, well, I can do this, so I will. And that's depressing and kind of says a lot about humanity. And I think there's a lot of saying things about humanity in the modern world through their interactions with this kind of different society, and how they can't like free themselves kind of from that, and also kind of just want and take and take. It probably says something about Americans as well. I do like this kind of horror film, and I think this kind of like Wicker Man type of idea, but it is interesting seeing someone who is so praised as an auteur kind of make more of a genre or subgenre film. It's interesting. I don't know a lot of auteurs that are as into that or do it almost more knowingly, like saying like, oh, I'm making a genre film. Ari Aster didn't really do that. He said he's making a horror film, but goes a little deeper than that. I like what he's saying with it. I like what he's saying about the emotions of these characters and things like that. And it feels like a good horror director, he understands how to use that subgenre to say something about the characters, to say something about what he wants to say it about. And it's not just about the horror element of it. And he does that to such an extreme, you almost kind of, they don't really feel a lot like very many horror films. But in this, it did feel less surprising. I did, while I was watching it, I felt a little weirder. Whereas Hereditary, I didn't necessarily know where it was going to go. In Midsommar, I would constantly know. I didn't know what the end result would be, and there's definitely some freaky imagery that, like, if you could guess that, I would guess you have some issues. But just like the way this kind of thing flows, it was weird because it was like, I definitely saw like an original take on this, but it felt like the actual story was something I've seen, like before. And it does remind me of both Wicker Man, and I've heard Texas Chainsaw being brought up a lot, the idea of coming from an urban environment, going to kind of more of a sparse kind of country life. And there are certain elements of like Texas Chainsaw in this as well. And he definitely knows that genre and knows what to use it for and understands what to say with it. I think he's actually a very smart horror director to be able to do that, but he is almost like kind of a cross-section of a drama, a very intense like auteur drama director with a horror director with these kind of like interesting like foreign influences. He's a director you really want to pour over all of his stuff. You want to listen to the interviews for. So I understand why he's such an auteur name and so forth. But in Midsommar, what we're getting from it is primarily the emotions and the drama. I almost think he's more drama director than horror director, but he likes mixing with those elements, and it's like he likes more what the horror is saying than the horror itself, which I find really cool actually. I like seeing like a traditional kind of horror film, and it seems like he's kind of like, I know the whole term elevated horror, which I don't really like very much, but he seems someone who like respects horror and understands what it can say and wants to play in that world with the drama. And that's what this is really doing, as well as I think kind of playing within the idea that, when you have these kind of ugly Americans coming to a foreign town and then being horrified by it, kind of like playing within that, especially like people who are kind of more open to traveling and stuff and think like everything's cool and I'll learn so much about myself. When people have that attitude, they'll kind of maybe go along with things and then later be like, I don't know if I necessarily agreed with that or like that, or that put me in a weird position and so forth. And you're kind of infringing on another culture to have your like eat, pray, love moment. And I think it definitely like calls to mind that it's like, the other thing is like most of these people are ugly Americans. I think there's only one actual American actor in this movie, William Jackson Harper, who's known as Chidi from The Good Place. I thought that was funny, as most of the uglier Americans were played by English actors, which is very American to outsource even that. But they were very good at it, particularly Will Poulter, who was originally supposed to play Pennywise. Made me kind of think about what he would have done with that back when a different director was attached to that. All of their kind of group like playing off of that world, and like kind of the idea of drugs and how drugs play into this kind of docile nature of people not really dealing with things, and the only way they can deal with things is some sort of inebriation. I mean, this really is saying more about like our society and how we are and how we process certain issues and how we're very docile about certain issues and how we don't let issues really start saying something until it gets like so ridiculously bad, but it's really been there on the surface the entire time. But also, you know, how this film plays with like this world and how well it was shot by the same DP who did Hereditary, Paweł Progozowski. He almost feels like if you were bringing a DP who is known more for foreign films, like I'd watch a lot of like a Criterion Collection kind of cinematographer, particularly with the kind of yellow, there's this yellow house that like remind me kind of maybe El Topo or just like foreign films and that sensibility, and they were able to play within that. And I liked how they did more masters, and they had a real reason to do like kind of big wide shots, and it kind of gives you a sense of the whole society. It was actually very well shot. It kind of like really gave you this unnerving sense that plays within it, that like it feels like Ari Aster likes that unnerving feeling going throughout this film, but the way it's shot gives you a real sense of this community while you also don't really know much. You know, as it was going on, I was like, I feel like I know a lot, but I also feel like I don't know shit. I feel like even afterwards, like there's no like monologue where someone goes, all right, so here's how this whole thing works and makes sense. Like no one really gets into it, and that kind of adds the creepy, insane feeling of it, much like The Wicker Man. It's interesting that we have, even though we have cell phones and Google Maps and everything and all the things we do to tell you where you are at all times and understand things very easily, we still have that sense that there might be a society somewhere that is still believing in these ancient pagan ways, or human sacrifices, or killing people, or could destroy you just because, you know, they can take advantage of you. And it's interesting that this film works so well as it does in this day and age, but I think that is still that's more of a fear, honestly, because of everything so understandable. When you can't understand anything, that sounds pretty fucking scary. Interesting how they use like people who are not white in this film, how they were kind of killed off very quickly, how this society works, how, you know, there's lots to read into, and I can understand if you're like a younger cinephile who has a lot more free time than I do, and you want to just rewatch this film and say it says stuff about America and white toxic male masculinity, which I do think that is true, and relationships and how men and women process grief and how they care for one another and how communication breaking down could be probably the most horrific thing. Hereditary was like such a big movie for me, but I still like Midsommar, and I to be honest, if you made movies to this quality, I would still be very happy through an entire filmography. But I don't think this is the kind of like earth-shattering moment. Like that felt like a truly original, different kind of voice, which I could see, you know, 70s influences in them. We live in a postmodern time, so obviously things are influenced by other things, but seeing him become a genre director was interesting, and I liked what he did with it, but it wasn't something I sunk my teeth into as much. Like, I still think this is probably one of the best films of the year. It almost felt like weird because I liked him doing something within a subgenre, and I liked how he did with it, and I thought he did a really good job, but I kind of didn't really feel like I got as into it. Maybe I was expecting to just fall in love with this. Maybe, you know, I do kind of leave all the baggage at the door usually when I go see a movie, but it did feel like that this film kind of moved in a different way than I expected. I found it fascinating and interesting and different, and I really liked it, but I think when thinking of Ari Aster as a director, it feels more like him trying to kind of be a little more sort of traditional. But at the same time, this film isn't traditional. It's kind of in a weird space where I'm still like thinking about this film and thinking about ideas with this film, and I think this is a very rich film. Whether we're talking about like elevated horror or whatever the fuck, which is a stupid term, but I do think that there are more denser kind of meatier, kind of big, rich kind of horror films right now. And I think horror as a genre is more known for like, hey, you know, I want to have a good time and watch some kills. And this is not that, but I think it plays more into kind of a genre that we've seen before and understand. And I think when you think of the cheaper horror movies, it's something you sit back and go, oh yeah, I know that this is going to happen. You appreciate it for that. When someone takes something that you already know in the horror genre and you're going through it beat by beat, you're kind of waiting for them to like say something when they're in a tour like this. I think if this is the first film I'd seen by him, maybe I would appreciate it more. I like that he kind of freed himself and made him more of a studio horror director while also being definitely an auteur, but and I like how he twisted it. I just don't think I loved it as much as Hereditary was just so different. I guess this is definitely different. It definitely isn't like a normal kind of movie. I guess my justifications for not liking enough aren't necessarily the greatest, but I couldn't help by being like less surprised by it. I almost would like to see it again, but I still think it is an amazingly smart horror film, and one that understands what this subgenre is saying, and using that in this kind of interesting relationship drama setting is probably one of the great relationship dramas of our age. And I like all the crazy imagery and all that. I mean, it's not the craziest thing in the world either. It's like, I get if you don't see weird horror movies or weird movies a lot, this is like gonna blow your mind, but like, come on, wasn't Mandy crazier from like a year ago? I appreciate Midsommar, and I think it is like a grand horror statement, much like Hereditary is. And I think what Ari Aster is really trying to use horror for is to really say something about humanity in the modern age and relationships and these characters, and do a really rich, interesting drama and present it through the horror lens. And I think that makes him kind of one of the more interesting horror directors around right now. Seeing him twist the genre this time, maybe I guess felt a little too much like I know what was going to come, even though when we got to that point, I really didn't expect what I was going to get. So if you have seen Midsommar and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.